In a quiet grove in ancient India, shaded by the vast branches of a Bodhi tree, a small gathering of monks sat in stillness. Their eyes were half closed, their breath steady, their minds focused on the present. Before them sat Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, his serene expression reflecting the peace he had found beyond the noise of the world. A restless young monk, Ananda, shifted in his seat. His mind was troubled, racing with thoughts of the past and worries for the future. He could not understand how to silence these distractions and fully embrace the now. Sensing his unease, the Buddha gently smiled. Ananda, you are here, yet your mind is elsewhere. Let me tell you a story. And so, the lesson began. Chapter 1. The Prince Who Searched for Time. Before he became the Buddha, Siddhartha was a prince. His life was one of luxury, filled with silk robes, grand feast, and the promise of a future as a great king. But despite having everything, he felt a void within him, an ache that no riches could soothe. One day, Siddhartha's father, King Suddhodana, called him to the palace gardens. "My son," the king said, "why do you seem troubled when your future is so bright?" Siddhartha gazed at the rippling waters of the lotus pond. "Father, I see people in the marketplace running about, always chasing something. Some seek wealth, others chase love, and many live in fear of what is to come. Why are we always searching, yet never content?" The king sighed. "It is the way of the world, my son. People strive to build a better future. But if the future is always ahead, when does one truly live?" Siddhartha asked. The king had no answer. That night Siddhartha's heart felt heavy. The palace walls that once brought him comfort now seemed to confine him. He yearned for something beyond gold and jewels, something that could not be grasped but only experienced. Thus began his journey. Siddhartha could not ignore his restlessness. Though his life was filled with comfort, a question burned within him. Why do people suffer? One evening, as the palace slept, Siddhartha's curiosity led him beyond its golden gates. Disguised in simple robes, he wandered through the city streets with his loyal charioteer, Channa. As they traveled, he encountered three sights that shook him. First, he saw an old man, frail and bent with age. His skin was wrinkled, his steps unsteady. Siddhartha had never seen aging before. "Channa," he asked, "will we all become like this?" Channa lowered his gaze. "Yes, my prince. No one can escape aging." Next they came upon a sick man groaning in pain. His body trembled with fever, his breath uneven. "Does suffering come for all?" Siddhartha asked. Channa nodded. "Illness is part of life." Finally they passed a funeral procession. Mourners wept as a body was carried through the streets. Siddhartha stood frozen. "And death?" he whispered. Channa sighed. "Even kings must die." Siddhartha's heart grew heavy. His mind raced. How can we live joyfully if suffering, sickness, and death are inevitable? But just as despair crept in, he saw a fourth sight. A wandering ascetic, dressed in rags but radiating peace. The man had nothing, yet he was content. Siddhartha realized that answers would not be found in wealth or power, but in understanding the nature of life itself. That night, he made his choice. He would leave the palace behind and seek the truth. Chapter 3. The Search for Enlightenment. Siddhartha walked away from his life as a prince, trading his silks for the robes of a monk. He sought wisdom from great teachers, practiced strict self-discipline, and meditated for days without food. For years he lived with extreme austerity, believing that by denying his body he could free his mind. Yet despite his sacrifices, enlightenment remained out of reach. He was weak, starving, and filled with doubt. One day, as he sat near the banks of a river, a young woman named Sujata approached and offered him a bowl of rice. "Eat," she said kindly. "Your body is the vessel of your mind." Siddhartha hesitated but accepted. As he ate, strength returned to him. He realized something profound. Neither indulgence nor extreme deprivation brought peace. The path lay in balance. Renewed, he walked to a great Bodhi tree and sat beneath its branches. I will not rise until I find the truth. He closed his eyes and turned inward. The night passed in deep meditation. Visions arose, his past lives, the desires that chained people to suffering, the illusions that blinded the mind. But instead of resisting, he observed each moment as it was. As dawn broke, understanding bloomed within him. He saw that suffering came not from life itself, but from attachment, to the past, to desires, to fears of the future. True freedom lay in embracing the present, in seeing life as it unfolded without clinging or resistance. In that moment, Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one.